And so the album is a concept album. And where did you come up with the term?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
did you have that in mind from the beginning, or were you were did that just sort of develop after a couple of songs, or how did that come about?
So in its infancy, back in 2017-ish, I was spending some time with my cousin, who is a great guitar player, and he also plays drums and he plays keyboards and he's a singer. He's kind of a multi-instrumentalist, and he also has just this really, he has zero musical training, but he has this amazing natural ear for songwriting and for melody and stuff. And so he and I were spending some time in my studio together, just jamming and coming up with random ideas. And we together, he and I, came up with the framework for what eventually became the song A Cell to Call Home. And so we wrote the intro together, the verses together, the chorus together. He helped me write a lot of the lyrics, and the lyrics that we wrote for that were based off of uh, a family member of ours who is very distant relation from me, but closer related to him, who struggled with drug addiction, going through the cycles in and out of, relapsing and then trying to pull himself out and then leaning on family and leaning on friends and using all the resources he had, but still just struggling. And he eventually ended up passing away of an overdose. And uh, my cousin was very, I think, affected by that whole situation, and he wanted to write something that could kind of t not directly tell the story, but almost like a tribute to the story, like talking about the struggles of addiction and like the mental side of working through all of that. And that's what started us down this whole rabbit hole, is that process of writing those lyrics for Cell to Call Home, the song. And then from there we said, well, hey, why not expand this into a whole album? And at the time, he and I did not realize this would become an Advent Horizon album. We just wrote this one song and then tried to start writing other stuff. And then eventually he and I kind of like split ways, and he moved out of state and we kind of lost contact with each other. But in the process of all that, I picked up that song and that concept
Hmm.
and brought it to Mike. And Mike said, hey, this is awesome. Let's turn this into the next Advent album. And that's when Mike and I started really seriously working on turning it into an Advent album. That was it's a concept album. It's not directly it's not an exact recreation of the story of this distant relative of mine, but like I said, it's kind of like it loosely follows this story of somebody who's struggling through addictions and how those addictions and his ups and downs of his life interplay with the relationships he has both romantically and with family. It's so it's yeah, I would say it's a concept album, but it's a little more complicated than that, in that it doesn't
Right,
there's not a very solid story that I can tell you line by line what happens.
right, right. On the first two or three listens of the whole album, I noticed that Angel Eyes kept coming back around in multiple
Mhm.
songs that phrase came about, and I kind of thought, well, that can't be a coincidence. That's got to be, that's got to be,
Yeah, so
very intentional, tying things together for sure.
so Angel would be the character in the story that represents um his he perceives her as his savior. The woman who he meets, who helps him pull himself out of his hitting rock bottom, and she is the one that he views as the reason that he is alive, and he places her on this pedestal. But over the course of the album, as their romance develops, as their relationship develops, he starts realizing her flaws, and that she is just as human as him and just as susceptible to giving into temptation and to taking the wrong path. And those those realizations drive a wedge in their relationship and end up creating this conflict that eventually kind of collapses everything for him.
So yeah, I feel like I'm gonna listen to it again with a little better understanding.